In this video, I'm going to be guiding you through Chapter 6.2, Environmental and Ethical Issues. Here are the syllabus statements. The business impacts on the environment include air pollution, bad waste disposal, use of fossil fuels, congestion of transportation of goods, and land usage. So now we move on to the concept of externalities, possible external costs and external benefits of business decisions. So what are private costs and private benefits? Private costs are costs of an activity that is paid for by the business. This means that they need to pay rent or the cost of land and their running costs. Their private benefits, on the other hand, is the money received from the sale of goods and services. This is essentially private firms receiving profit as their benefits. External costs, however, are costs paid for by the rest of society. And what are these costs? The cost to society is pollution, which is caused by waste products, smoke and fumes from fossil fuels, and noise from business activity, which is the cause of noise pollution. External benefits, however, is the gains to society from business activity. These are the jobs created from businesses, and or other businesses move into the area, which creates a more competitive environment. And lastly, taxes on profits, which are paid to the government. Now moving on to sustainable development. This is development which does not put the risk of living standards of future generations. Some examples would be to use renewable energy, such as fitting solar panels or wind turbines in their manufacturing facilities, recycling waste, such as reusing resources such as plastic, using fewer resources so they can use production methods like lean production, developing eco-friendly products. This can be using biodegradable packaging or recycled packaging. And lastly, changing the manufacturing method, which is to use eco-friendly manufacturing equipment. So now moving on to the businesses that embark on sustainable decisions. The advantages are that they get a better brand image, and because of this, they will be able to attract more customers, increasing demand. They will be able to set a higher price. Pressure groups would less likely to take action on them. The disadvantages, however, is that there will be a higher cost, such as fixed costs, because they'll need to use special equipment, and there could potentially be a higher variable cost, as the supplier might not be environmentally friendly, and also it might be very difficult to find the materials required. Moving on to pressure groups. These are groups of people who act together to try to force businesses to adopt policies. Firstly, they encourage boycotts, which means to stop the purchase of a product from a particular company. They do demonstrations, which is to voice out on the street, communicating their discontent about a particular product. They also petition and lobby. And lastly, they try to gain as much public support and media coverage as possible. And in the end, businesses will get a bad reputation, and some of the business will end up closing down. So moving on to legal controls. Legal controls in this context are laws created by the government to protect the environment. This restricts businesses from locating in environmentally sensitive areas, such as national parks. This also prevents businesses from dumping waste into the rivers, such as hot water or chemicals. And lastly, it prevents businesses from making products that are not easily recycled. The government can intervene in a few ways. The first way would be to fine or give a penalty to a business that breaks these laws. The government can issue pollution permits, which will allow a business to pollute a certain amount. And lastly, they can tax companies the amount of carbon they emit into the atmosphere. And all of this increases the cost of business. Moving on to the ethical issues a business might face. Ethical issues in business are choices where making money clashes with what's doing considered morally right or fair. These include the welfare of employees, the working conditions of the employees, child labor employed, and fair pay to employees and suppliers, all of which increases the cost of business, which impacts their profitability. Disposing waste in a responsible way, buying products from local shops instead of importing them cheaply, finding a responsible supplier, using environmentally friendly packaging. We need to avoid the situation where businesses are striving for profit maximization over the greater good. And lastly, businesses should never be creating adverts that are predominantly aimed at children. If a business decides to be ethical, the advantages are that the business's image and reputation will be improved. This will be a motivating factor for its employees, and also the brand awareness of that business will be elevated. However, the disadvantages of being ethical is that the cost will be very high in terms of raw materials. And lastly, increased employee pay and benefits will increase costs. This will cut into the profitability of the business. Now, moving on to the solved examination questions. Please be reminded that I have a playlist full of examination techniques and strategies in the description below. Do you think manufacturing businesses should always respond to environmental pressures? Justify your answer. Responding to environmental pressures will reduce the risk of a boycott, and this will allow the business to continue their operations without any interference. They can also use environmentally friendly, sustainable suppliers, which would cost more. Upon evaluation, the manufacturing business will need to purchase new equipment, which will increase their overhead costs. I think that responding to these pressures are beneficial as it enhances reputation of the business. This will lead to an increase of demand and revenue and profits. Do you think using renewable energy is the best way for a manufacturing business to contribute to sustainable development? Justify your answer. This is to conserve more natural resources, as the resources are limited. Alternatively, it can produce products using more environmentally friendly production methods, and then waste will be reduced. Upon evaluation, they will need to buy new manufacturing equipment, which will impact on their profit margins. Therefore, a manufacturing business should use renewable energy, as the energy bills will be reduced significantly. Explain 2 ways a pressure group might influence DNG's decision. Way 1. Organize boycotts. This will lead to a fall in demand of its 60 million customers due to customers actively not purchasing DNG's products. Way 2. Create negative publicity of DNG. These pressure groups can write negative reviews on their decision to use coal power, damaging its reputation and brand image. Do you think legal controls are the most important factor for a manufacturing business to consider when deciding which country to locate its operations in? Justify your answer. Legal controls are important as the government may restrict the business from locating in areas, such as environmentally sensitive areas. The access to suppliers are actually more important because they allow the business to gain access to cheaper materials. And in the evaluation, access to suppliers are not the most important, as it is possible to import raw materials cheaply. And therefore, legal controls is the most important, as the law will stop the factory from being built and production will not take place. Explain 2 possible reasons why being ethical is important to PCY. Reason 1. Build better reputation. This is because customer loyalty will increase, and therefore allowing them to get a competitive edge for its insurance products. Reason 2. It motivates employees, as consumers will experience a better customer service from PCY services from its 500 employees. Explain 1 benefit and 1 limitation to ACP of being ethical. Increased reputation. Customers will be willing to pay higher prices for a more ethical business that sells computers. Limitation. Increased labor costs. As their 3,000 employees will be paid more, this will increase the overhead costs of ACP. Do you think a business being ethical will always lead to lower profits? Justify your answer. The business will be able to increase employee motivation, as they are able to maintain high-quality products, which will increase their demand. However, being ethical will increase costs, as they will need to pay their suppliers and employees more, which will result in a lower profit margin. In evaluation, being ethical will result in charging higher prices, which means that the business will be less competitive. I think that being ethical will lead to more profits because of its reputation. They can then charge a higher price, and as a result, gain a competitive edge. I hope that helped. I hope you found that useful. Have a good day. Bye-bye.